Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beatley Tones Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video. In today's video, we've got something a little bit different. I'm here with Ian Derbyshire, the author of this fabulous book, Macca in the Long Noughties, and I'm going to have a little chat with him about this, and then we'll talk about how you might want to get that book. We'll talk about that at the end of the interview. So Ian is actually in Brazil at the moment, and he's seen Paul in Sao Paulo in Brazil. How was it?
Yes, I mean, obviously it wasn't especially good going out to Brazil for that concert, but it was an opportunity to see Paul, and it was a fantastic concert. You're always a bit worried about Paul's voice and that, but actually he was. I think the band do such a job in terms of backing vocals and especially Abe on backing vocals and that.
Yeah,
that it was brilliant, really, and. Obviously, very heavy in Beatles songs, but that's what Paul does really, because half the audience are wearing Beatles t-shirts and maybe a quarter Paul McCartney t-shirts. But I saw him. It was probably nearly 20 years ago, and I thought this concert was better than that one, really. So they really professionalised it all, and it's like a sort of tribute show for the Beatles, all his career. It covers his entire career.
Yeah, I think he does really know, he does know what he's doing as far as the set list goes. There's as much as us hardcore fans want him to do, some deep cuts. You can see from people that have been to the gigs on this South American tour. I'm talking about fan videos that they've been posting on YouTube. They all seem to be mostly posting Beatles songs rather than Wing songs or solo songs. So it just goes to show that the first to hear Beatles songs is definitely present at these concerts, I think.
But I was quite surprised with the Now and Then one, because I think a couple of weeks earlier we saw the Star Beatles, who were like an Argentinian tribute band. I think they've just been to Liverpool as well, and they did Now and Then, and that was a time for everyone to take a toilet break there. But when Paul did it, it actually suits his voice very well. Actually, I prefer his version to the John Lennon voice, and it's going to be a strong part of his repertoire really now.
Yeah. That Paul McCartney, you got a got back. Is it a sticker or something on the door behind?
No. It was one of the beer, Budweiser. They were giving out these things because on the other side it says "Nah Nah." So when you get to Hey Jude, everyone holds it up really, and it just says Paul McCartney, Sao Paulo, 16th of October. It's actually the other thing is the arena they had there. It's a football arena, but it was built recently for the World Cup and that, and it actually does very well for music. I had obviously I wasn't close to the stage, but I had a very good view of everything, and the sound was very good, and everyone had a great time really.
So do they put those on all the seats, or is it just in the sort of the front few rows, or
no? You collect it for outside the bar, actually. Outside the bar, really. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's talk about your book. I have to say that I have really enjoyed this book. It's really good because the noughties is not it's not a period that has bbeen covered by any other books that I'm aware of, certainly not in this amount of depth. I mean, you talk about every release that has come out during this period, but you also talk about Paul's private life as well, and what is going on in his actual life. And I can remember Alan Kozin and Adrian Sinclair saying that when they wrote the McCartney legacy, they found it impossible to separate Paul's actual life from his music life. And I guess it's pretty much the same for you as well.
Yeah, but that was because originally, I don't know whether are you aware of this series of books. They call it the Decades series of books, which is produced by some British publishing company. And I was thinking of doing one on Decades in the 2000s, Paul McCartney. But the actual sort of thing, I had too much information on his life really to fit into that format, because I mean, as I found, everything was, there's a lot of serendipity in terms of he meets somebody who puts him on to somebody else. There's all these sort of artists he's connected with who get connected with. For example, Ian Dury, he knew him through some artist friends and that sort of thing. So there's so much of his life is reflected. Although obviously you don't really, very few people will actually know the real personal life and that, because he's very well covered whenever he goes on tour, and what happens there is well covered. But actually, what happens inside the marriage is still something I suppose only Paul will know about.
Yeah, I guess so. So when did you decide to start writing this book? What made you pick this particular decade?
Yeah, well, it's really because I had some time, because I used to write a lot of books for things for Encyclopedia till about 2021 or something like that. So I had some time after that, and I thought I'd always wanted to write up music books, because when I was at university, I used to do reviews in music magazines and that. And in terms of why do this, if you're thinking about Paul McCartney, if you think like if you're going to make a film about Paul McCartney, I think maybe two phases in his life you'd go for, really. I mean, obviously one of them is maybe the death of Brian Epstein to the end of the Beatles, setting up his early years until about 1973, 74, when that becomes popular. But I mean, that one is been well covered. Obviously, the Kozin and all the lots of books on that. So the second one was interested in terms of how he reacts to the death of Linda, who was such a key force in his life. And then it was quite a sort of turbulent time in his personal life over the next 10 years, well, 12 years. This is why it's Long Noughties, because it's not.
Yes,
it starts 98. So that sort of thing. It's also in terms of my own interest in Paul McCartney. I was really into him in sort of 1973 to 79 and that. And then obviously I still bought his music and that, but I moved on a bit to people like Bruce Springsteen in the 1978 to the 80s, and Van Morrison in the 1990s. But then I sort of came back to Paul McCartney with sort of Flaming Pie and the 2000s, and actually quite like Chaos and Creation is obviously well liked. But I mean, Driving Rain was as an album I quite liked at the time. It's a bit long, but
yeah, me too. I like it as well.
So it's not really been covered, as you say, in other books, apart from briefly in biographies and that. So it's something that interests me, and I find out about it. And it's more obviously it's a book about his life and that, but also a reference book. When you're listening to his albums, you can find out about the songs and also what was going on and influencing the songs.
Yeah. So writing is your full-time job?
No. When I sort of I run a sort of training business and that sort of things. But I've always, throughout my life, I've started out actually as a sort of history, writing books on Indian history, and then I moved. I was interested in politics, so I wrote books on United States politics and Chinese politics and all that sort of thing. And then all the time I was writing for encyclopedias what was happening in the world. So I've always done writing, but it's not really a profession you can make much of a living out of, really. So I've always had other jobs. Yeah.
Okay. So in the book you cover everything musically, not just the pop albums, but you also cover all the classical albums that have come out during that period, plus the sort of the two ambient fireman albums, and obviously Electric Arguments as well. I guess that Electric Arguments is kind of the last sort of studio album of this period. And do you have a, do you when you, I mean, everything is documented in the book, and you speak about each track, but you never really critique it, do you? You don't actually say, oh, this is this is a brilliant track, or there's a fantastic drum part in this track, or you don't really do that sort of stuff. So do you have a like a a favorite, firstly a favorite album from this period?
Yeah, when I at the end of the book, I do like a playlist of sort of 20, for me, we call it the best songs or the representative songs of the period, which is I think is available on Spotify. That one. In terms of favorite album, it is certainly Memory Almost Full is the album. I've always struggled with the cover to the album. It's always put me off, really. It's a bit, but once you get past that, it's a sort of, I suppose it's his most poppy album of the period as well, and it's also, I mean, for me, it's his albums normally they might have one or two sort of tracks which are not quite up to the full standard, but this one, Memory Almost Full, is one of his. I would put him in his top 5 of all his albums, really. That one.
And when you talk about Memory Almost Full in the book, you mention about the, it's got a funny history, hasn't it? Like really that album, because it kind of started life almost straight after Driving Rain, and then it was left for a while, and then he came back to it. So some of it is with the band, some of it is with him playing everything. But when the album comes out, it's on the New Here Music label, which is owned by Starbucks, and you can buy a copy of the album when you buy your morning coffee and a croissant. I'll have a flat white, a croissant, and a Memory Almost Full, please.
Yeah.
But you mentioned in the book that almost half the sales of the album during the first week came from Starbucks, but those sales never counted towards its chart position in the UK. So are we talking a number 1 album here in reality, do you think?
I wouldn't go as far as that, but it certainly would have been. Obviously, one of the problems at this time was the whole CD market had collapsed, really, with the from about the early 2000s, with all these use of streaming and sharing files and file sharing and that sort of thing, and that this was one of the things behind actually Paul McCartney. I think he was very disappointed with Driving Rain in terms of its sales and that, because it didn't do very well, and it was all affected by the 9/11 in terms of delays in getting it released and that sort of thing. And then this is probably why he sort of changed. He started out with tracks with his band and David Kahn, who'd been the producer on Driving Rain and that, and then I think he was looking for a new direction and that, and through his daughter, actually, he got through his daughter and son and that, I think they sort of put him on to Nigel Godri, who obviously is quite a big name with was a Radiohead producer, and Nigel Godri didn't want any of the bands on the album and that, and Paul had to sort of tell them, and they took it okay in that. But I mean, Chaos and Creation is a very good album and that. But I think when I listen to both of them, I would say Driving Rain is Memory Almost Full is much more pop and chart orientated, really, compared to Chaos and Creation right now.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think it's more poppy. So let's go back to the sort of the beginning of the period. Now, you call it the long noughties because you wanted to go back to 1998 so you could include Linda's passing, because that is so integral into in the story. Is that right? Is that the reason why we went back?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I suppose you mean you could even go back to 1997 with Flaming Pie, really, because I think that's the start of a change in his songwriting as well. Really, it's a bit more mature and reflective in his songwriting style. You see in Flaming Pie, and he also his son James becomes involved in some of the songs as well on that and Driving Rain. But in '98 it was, as he said, it was a big challenge when he left the Beatles and he got very depressed, and Linda helped him through it. And this one, when Linda died in '98, and that he almost sort of went out of public view for almost a year, and that he was, and a lot of his early releases in these period rushes was very much influenced by what he was going through, because it's almost like I don't know if I had morphine, so pain relief, because I had a bad back once, and it's almost like that, really, listening to some of the tracks on rushes, and then he does Run Devil Run is to get it out of his system, and a lot of those songs were ones which Linda liked as well.
And do you think that was absolutely the right project for him at that time, where he didn't have to think about writing songs about his loss? He could just go into the studio with a crack band and just belt out some old 50s rock and roll and play some guitar. Do you think that was like the perfect sort of kind of helping him to
it was a sort of cathartic,
get over it, but helping him to cope with it?
Yeah, it's a sort of cathartic release. I think one of the people who worked on the album said that, and also in terms of he's done several of these sort of rock and roll albums, and I think this one is by far the strongest one of them. And he's not even doing a lot of the tracks are quite obscure, really, for people who don't know them.
Yeah, really, really obscure. I mean, there wasn't when that came out, there wasn't many of those songs that I'd actually heard of. Some of them were B-sides and stuff like that, and stuff that
his vocals on it are really strong on it.
Yeah, I mean, things like All Shook Up, he just absolutely rips the original to shreds. Just fantastic stuff. So moving on from there, the next sort of album is Driving Rain, the much maligned Driving Rain.
Somebody said, was it Driving Pain? Was it something? Or was it one of the other
Joe Mayo calls it Thriving Pain.
Thriving Pain.
Mr. Mayo, on his channel, he calls it Thriving Pain. But this is an album that I really like it. There are a lot of really good songs on it, and he's kind of in two places here, isn't he? With the writing of this album, because really this is his first album of original material after Linda has passed, and you kind of imagine, if this had been John Lennon making this record, this record would have been, full of, very sad, emotional songs. And this album isn't. There's a little bit of it. He's in two places, isn't he? Because he's still mourning the loss of Linda, but he's also found Heather as well. And these two factors kind of play into this album. And but it's one of these albums that has never really struck a chord with the majority of fans. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, he's actually in sort of three places, really, because obviously there were some songs written after Linda died, and then some when he's having starting his romance with Heather. But some of the songs actually go back to sort of periods before, while Linda was still alive and they were holidaying in the Caribbean with his son, really. So there's that sort of thing. I mean, obviously. There's no sort of it's not a poppy album, is it? Really, it's not. It's sort of quite a sort of serious album, and that, and it's a sort of change of style, really, because I think even compared to Flaming Pie, which was much more sort of, was a Beatles influence type of album. This is a different voice really for Paul McCartney, and he's actually the lyrics are a bit more personal, although I mean quite often he says, "Oh, it's nothing to do with his situation and that." But my main reason, I think, is is the CD age. It's at the height of that one, just before it collapsed in 67 minutes. It's very difficult to find an artist who can do 67 minutes of strong material. So the next two albums, Chaos and Memory Almost Full, were trimmed down to 45 minutes. And if you did the same on Driving Rain, I think you'd have a really strong album, really.
Yeah, it's funny. No one can sit still for an hour to listen to an album anymore. Which is a bit strange.
I think it was a big mistake to include this. Is it the Freedom on it as well, really? Because
well, that was why it kind of delayed, wasn't it? It was kind of delayed to include that. I mean, Freedom isn't the greatest of tracks, but obviously, it's quite an important song for that particular time, especially for the concert for New York thing. But it probably should have just stayed.
It should have been a single, really, standalone.
Yeah,
like Give Ireland Back to the Irish or something like that. It was just a standalone single, really.
Yeah. Okay.
But on this album, I think I really like the song. Is it Back in the Sunshine Again? That one. That's written with his son James, and I would say in his whole catalogue, if I was selecting sort of 10 deep cuts, that would be one of them I'd select.
That is my favourite track on the album.
And riding into Jaipur, he's got he's moving into George Harris territory. So with all the Indian
the sitar sort of droning throughout it, and rinse the raindrops. I know it's 10 minutes long, but it's fantastic. It's a fantastic bit of singing on that, and the way it changes pace halfway through, well, not even halfway through, after about 2 or 3 minutes, it kind of changes pace. Terrific.
Yeah, I think that was done because the producer said he's Paul overnight sort of did it all, and then he went overnight to edit it all and said, I can only edit it down to this much. I mean, I think he could have gone a bit further and chopped another 3 or 4 minutes off for him.
I think when he took it home, it was 25 minutes long or something something like that, and he managed to whittle it down to 10. That was enough. But it wasn't that success. It wasn't that successful as an album. And you talk in the book about Paul not really making any money out of his studio albums and relying on playing live and merchandise and Beatles income from Beatles stuff rather than from his own albums, which seems quite strange because they still shift quite a lot of units. I think his albums, don't they?
Whether he's just said that to reduce the amount of divorce settlements and that.
Yeah.
Because he did seem to have. Because nowadays, I just read in the newspapers a few days ago that he's over $1 billion. He's a billionaire, isn't he now? And he's over the last couple of years. So he's obviously progressed quite a lot since his divorce in sort of, was it 2008 and that when the settlement, or 2006 was it? So maybe that he was hiding a bit of his wealth from Heather then.
Yeah. And one thing that you do, you cover extensively. Well, it's not the only thing, but one of the things that I got a lot from, because some of it I could remember, but there was a lot of it that I couldn't remember, was the coverage of the breakdown of the marriage between him and Heather and the divorce and the settlement and all that sort of stuff. I can remember it all sort of unfolding, but some of the facts that you have, I mean, you've got a lot of detail in there. What sort of resources did you use for your research, not just for that particular ongoing story, but just generally for a lot of the sort of the private life stuff that you include in the book.
Yeah, I mean obviously there are some general biographies of Paul McCartney, these Howard Soons and all those type of things who have chapters covering this period, and then there's biographies of Heather Mills did an autobiography. She actually did 2 autobiographies. The second one got slightly changed from the from the first one, really. In that, but
like Cynthia Lennon's, then a little bit like Cynthia Lennon's.
Yeah, and then somebody did an unauthorized biography, but I'm not sure whether it was ever allowed to be released. In that they did an authorized one, but then obviously there's a lot of press coverage of that. You'll know from the tabloid press and that they were very, very, very keen on. Firstly, when she became his girlfriend, and leading up to the wedding, and then they really let fly when the separation was announced, and that with a lot of stories. And then finally, there's the divorce settlement, which goes into quite a lot of detail of the court case and that.
I mean, it was like an incredible turnaround from the press, because I think all through the last couple of decades, Macca was fair game. I think for the press, all these different stories about how tight he is, and any excuse really to badmouth him. And then once the whole Heather thing blew up, he was all of a sudden, he was our Macca, he was our national treasure, and we're going to defend him to the hill. And that's when he sort of became back in favour, and they became very, very anti Heather.
But actually, before she met him, Heather was she was very well. She was on all these interview shows, and that she was quite a celebrity herself, and doing a lot of getting good coverage really for all the charities she was doing. Really, I think it was just I don't know, people turned on her when she sort of fell out with Paul and that, and
I think that she she obviously did a lot of good work for charity, but then she just kind of went a little bit crazy.
Well, I think she sort of saw the opportunity to use Paul's platform to do it, and I don't think that was really an appropriate thing to do, really, in that.
Yeah, but I mean, once they had announced that they were separating, she would come out with, she would kind of go to the press with anything, and Paul was very dignified throughout the whole thing. He never said anything to, he didn't never spoke to the press, never went on TV and spoke about it. And she did the exact opposite and went to the press with everything. Anytime she could get her face on the telly, she was on the telly. And no one can ever forget the meltdown that she had on on GMTV or whatever it was. I can't remember.
So that was why her lawyers then, they sort of pulled out and said, you have to defend yourself now.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he had Prince Charles's lawyers, and she had Princess Diana's lawyers from their divorce case. But of course, her lawyers dipped out after the TV meltdown. They didn't feel they could win at all at that point.
Yeah, so then she poured some water over the lawyer's head at the end of the case, and that's
that's right. Yeah, I remember, and I think she wanted 50 million or something, and then she got about 20 million, I think, in the end, something around that figure, and I'm sure she was really quite happy with that. Chaos and Creation. Let's get back to the music. Chaos and Creation. For me, the best album in this period. I really like Memory Almost Full, but it is for me, it's the best album. Do we get that that album, or an album as good as that, without Nigel Godri, do you think?
Yeah, but obviously he pushed Paul on. Probably the best track on the album is Riding to Vanity Fair, and that was one where they had a great fallings out over and that. But in the end, that produced quite a masterpiece. track. I mean, there's some track I'm not really very keen on. This Fine Line, I think that's a bit plodding really. I prefer the opening track on Driving Rain to that one there. But then you got
Lonely Road.
This never happened before. Is like a Burt Bacharach type ballad in that, and Promise to You Girl is another one where it's got a very good melody at the start, but then I don't know, it could have been, they could have maybe got something better out of that really. I mean, a lot of people like that track, but
I like it.
I like the opening bit, but then it seems to sort of go off into different directions than that. English Tea, of course, is one of his sort of songs for what they call the granny songs. That's
the granny music, but it's fantastic. See, the thing is that when John Lennon called it granny music, they were in their late 20s. Now we're all old enough to be grannies or granddads. So you gave me the answer. Bring it on. No problem at all. An English tea.
But I think Jenny Wren that's a very good one. And I think actually I would say that is, if you listen to the lyrics, it does seem about Heather Mills really. If you if you listen to the lyrics and that, it does seem to be written about her.
You think Jenny Wren's about Heather,
as well as riding to Vanity Fair really.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously, it's somebody coming from a sort of bit of a broken background and that, and then coming out and singing and then stopping singing, and so that's. But I think it's his sort of Blackbird Part 2 really, and they did a good job on that one, I think.
Yeah, excellent song. Going back to personal lives, we see Mary, Stella, and James are fairly visual. They all they go to his gigs and all that sort of stuff. We don't really see much of Beatrice, who must be in her 20s now.
She must be so early 20s.
Yeah, and Heather's daughter. Linda's daughter Heather. We don't really see much or hear much about her. How do you think he keeps their lives private, or do you think it's their own choice, or do you think, as far as Beatrice goes, it's Heather sort of pulling the strings there and not allowing her to be, because she must live a normal life. I expect she, went to university or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first Heather, the one which was Linda's daughter, and that I think she sort of was lived with Paul in Sussex, the big Sussex farm, doing a lot of pottery type things and that, and she just sort of is not a person to be in the public, doesn't like to be in the public life. The Beatrice is one where, unlike the other children, she went to private school and that, so she obviously sort of secluded to that extent, and she's only really been seen, I think it was university sort of graduation type things. You see her there, but I mean, actually, Heather Mills since the divorce is not really been. Have you seen much of her in the UK press? You haven't seen much about her at all, really. So I think they must almost like agreement to keep a low profile. Really.
Yeah, well, she obviously had to sign like an NDA as part of the settlement. So if she can't go on and talk about Paul, then she's probably not interested. I don't know.
I think James had a lot of problems when they married Heather, because I think he said that obviously when Nancy Chevelle, she became quite close to him and that, and he really before that he had problems with alcohol and drugs and that during the marriage of Paul and Heather and that. So, but he's sort of he comes out every now and again when he releases a record. I think it was last year he released some album and that, and he does the things, but he keeps quite a low profile as well.
Yeah, I mean, he just recently did something with Sean Lennon, didn't he? Primrose
Hill or something like that. Primrose Hill, yeah.
But yeah, it's strange. I think think that it wasn't just James though. Really, there was a problem. Mary and Stella both had a problem.
Well, Stella, I think maybe mainly Stella and James. I think they were the two main ones, wasn't it? But
yeah. Okay, let's move. Well, we've talked about Memory Almost Full. Let's move on to Electric
Chaos. I think the other thing about the Chaos obviously was Nigel Godri used a lot of unusual instruments, and that was which gave it textures you wouldn't find on another album, really. So that is his main sort of input into it, is because when you see they did some sort of show, didn't they, on the release of it, when they were playing around with all different instruments and making noises with Paul's fingers on the glasses and that. But all these extra textures add to the feel of the album, which obviously is why it's seen as one of his strongest later career works.
Yeah, and I think that even though he didn't want the band on the album, Nigel Godri, he wanted Paul to play almost anything. There is quite a few session players on the album, isn't there?
Yeah, sort of string instruments and strange. The duduk, I think, a duduk on the Jenny Wren and that. So it's obviously there's probably instruments. Paul plays a lot of instruments, but not those ones. I think.
Before we move on to Electric Arguments, let's just talk briefly about Twin Freaks.
Yes.
Do we even count that as being a Paul McCartney album? I'm not sure that we do, because it's a remix job, really. It's a DJ's remix. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it would be more the work of the what's he called, the remix of the Freelance Hellraiser.
Yeah, who doesn't look in the slightest bit like a Hellraiser at all.
No, so I mean, I think he did it because actually, on going back to the Sao Paulo concert, I was intrigued. There's something. I think he started in 2009. Is it Chris Holmes he's taken over the same sort of role in terms of mixing all songs beforehand and that, and it'd be good to get his release there. But I mean, obviously Paul he listened to them, he liked them, and he was involved in the tours and that. So I suppose it's a Paul McCartney approved remixes, really, in that. But I think it's actually it's a bit of a shame it's not been released more widely, really, because I think a lot of people, as a record store day release, and that would buy that, would jump at the chance to buy this, because I think it's very, very listenable, really.
Yeah, I like it. I did manage to get one. Cost a fortune, but I did manage to get one.
Now I've got a CD. I've got a CD sort of bootleg version, which also has a lot of other things on it, really. So that's it's a good listen. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Electric Arguments, and how does that come about? Is it because this is a different type of album to the first two Fireman albums. This is a proper rock album, even though I think most of the songs were probably made up on the hoof in that way, but it is a proper rock album, whereas the other two are not really.
Yeah, again, it's a bit like Rush's, because it was in a difficult time in Paul's life. He was just sort of the final stages of the divorce proceedings and that, and he basically found his relief in locking himself in his studio in Hog Hill studio with youth and that, and I think they had one day per track, really, so they just sort of started out. Youth would give him a few ideas and try this type of rhythm and that, and then there were some sort of beat poetry books which they find some lyrics from, and so obviously the big difference is he's singing on probably the first half of the album is ones where he's singing on. The second half is more like Rush's Part 2. Really, it's more instrumental type tracks than that. But overall, it's a very I think it's well received by the Paul McCartney fan base album. This one.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is one of the, like you say, it's one of those albums that I think it starts off really strongly and it kind of fades away a little bit as you get towards the end. But you know, it's a good album, very listenable.
It's also, I mean, I think there's some sort of uplifting tracks, like which probably suggest his new relationship with Nancy Shevell on that. And, so it's a sort of, although it's a difficult time, there's quite a few sort of pulsating tracks about the sunshine and that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, so 2007, he meets Nancy, I think, and this is a much better match for Paul than Heather. I think a much more calming, not wanting to be in everyone's face all the time, and letting Paul sort of take centre stage more, I think.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously it's lasted, and she's traveling around with him on his South American tour, and she'll be off to Europe with him as well, really, because obviously they knew each other a bit from because Paul and Linda had this house in the is it the Hamptons in New York, and Nancy had been through problems with breast cancer as well, and she set up a charity for that, and they're introduced by Barbara Walters to sort of matchmaker, and she's obviously, Paul has a thing for American women. It's just a second American woman, which goes well with him.
Yeah. Two New Yorkers and a Geordie.
It's also, she actually went to this Arizona university where Linda's husband used to work, really. So there's quite a few connections between the two.
Okay. So also in this period, it's the period that Paul gets back on the touring horse. So 2002, he goes out on tour with the Driving Rain album. It's the first full tour that he's done since 1993 with the Off the Ground tour, the New World Tour, as it was called, I think, at the time. And in your book, you cover all the tours, all the set lists, little minutiae changes to the set lists that happened throughout the tour. What are your feelings about the let's talk about the 2002 tour that sort of arrived in Europe in 2003. I think it started off in America, didn't it? Back in the US, back in the world tour.
Yes, I mean, obviously it was after 9/11 and that, and it was very much a sort of, he saw it as sort of celebrating America during that tour, and it's also because when he first started doing tours, he had very few Beatles songs. Gradually increased them in the 1990s to maybe sort of 30% of the set list. Now he's much higher proportion, and today, of course, it's sort of two thirds of the set list. So it was an opportunity really to, because George Harrison, John Lennon were not quite this time. George Harrison passed away around about during this period, but he was almost like carrying the Beatles flame now to this new generation of fans, and it became something that is just honed over the last 2 decades, and probably if you went to one of his gigs then, it wouldn't be too much different from one of the gigs now. But I don't know. Have you been to many his gigs during this?
Well, I'm going to the O2 in December. That'll be my 23rd show. But I think, because I started early, or as early as I could, with the 1979 UK tour. So I saw 3 dates on that tour, plus the concert for Kampuchea. Was that as well?
Right.
And so I got off to a good start. Quite a few within a couple of weeks.
Did you see? Because obviously the other thing is, he not just these tours. He did some major events like the Moscow. The Moscow concert, the St. Petersburg concert, the Rome, a couple of concerts one in the Colosseum, one outside.
Yeah.
In Canada, Glastonbury, which he'd always wanted to do, his first Glastonbury, and the Coachella as well, really. So.
Yeah, I saw him in the Verona Colosseum. I don't know. It's not really called the Colosseum. I think it's just called Amphitheater. I think in 2013, that was probably the best setting that I've seen him in, which was just absolutely fantastic. And you could the amphitheater is just it's just a falling down amphitheater, so they don't charge you to get in during the day, so you could just walk. We were there 2 or 3 days before the gig, and we'd go out for the day and then come back and we'll go into the amphitheater just to see them building the stage. A set for a Paul McCartney gig, it takes about 3 or 4 days to build that set. It's incredible, really. Just for one date. No wonder the price is so expensive.
This is why he probably has a couple of days now between each gig now he does in South America, and that he has. Because the other thing I think from this book is quite a lot of information. There's this Netherlands Paul McCartney fan club who produced the magazine. Have you?
The magazine, yeah.
And they've got books all about all the tours, what happens each gig and that, and from that you get the impression that Paul obviously he learns the local dialect and that, but he also likes to go out cycling. That's it. Yeah. They do one for all these tours and that, and he likes to visit the places, cycle around. He's cycling around Red Square and that sort of thing, and so he's not one of these people who spends all his time in the hotel and doing all these rock stars. He's interested in, engaged, and sometimes during these tours he was off to speak to the European Parliament about meat. Vegetarian issues and that sort of thing. So he was very active actually during this whole decade on vegetarian issues, landmine issues. He did a lot of concerts for the Landmines Trust as well, and so that's another part of his life. And painting, of course, was something he became. He suddenly revealed himself to be a sort of a painter during this period as well.
Just briefly going back to the sort of the live arena, what is it? Or I'm wondering what your thoughts are, because this period that you're covering, the noughties, he does a couple of tracks of Driving Rain on the 2002-2003 tour. They're never to be seen again. Then he does a US tour in 2005 and plays 3 or 4 songs from Chaos and Creation. They're never to be seen again. We got lots of gigs. In 2007, I went to the Electric Proms, I think it was called. The Electric Proms at the Roundhouse. There, where he played 4 songs, I think, from Memory Almost Full, Dance.
He played. My favourite song of the entire period is House of Wax.
House of Wax. The greatest song that he's written this century, as far as I'm concerned. Brilliant song. But Dance Tonight survives the set now. But that is that is the only one. So that is the only song from this whole.
Yes, that was in Sao Paulo, the only one, because there were only about 3 or 4 songs for the last 40 years in the set, and Dance Tonight was the only one, because he did New from the subsequent period, and My Valentine from that period. But the reason I think he does
Come On To You as well was also from
Come On To You,
that decade as well. Yeah,
I think the reason he does Dance Tonight is I think maybe because he likes to do one track for his new wife Nancy. He does songs for George Harrison and John Lennon, several for Linda, and I think this one is because when he played it, it was his daughter Bea started dancing around to it, so maybe
yes, I remember him telling that story.
So it could be happy times with Heather and Bea, so that could be his Heather track in his set list, really, because this is a shame that he doesn't play things like House of Wax and that sort of thing. But then again, looking at the audience in Sao Paulo, they once he started playing My Valentine, that was the first one song where they got a bit restless. So it is difficult to get songs in his set, and as Paul said, Bob Dylan once said to him, his band said that one of his songs it went really well with the audience tonight, and Bob Dylan said, right, we'll take that out of the set. and Paul said, no, I do the reverse. I want to please the audience and imagine what songs I would like to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this is true, because it's all very well for us hardcore fans wanting deep cuts, but if you're seeing him for the first time and he doesn't do Let It Be and he doesn't do Hey Jude, you're going to feel shortchanged, aren't you? If
he should really do. If he's smart, really, he should do a small concert just for the diehard fans, obscure cuts, and get it recorded as an album, and he'd make a lot of money out of that, really, I think.
Yeah, I can't ever see him doing it, but it's like, he's forgotten about these songs, or he just doesn't have the faith in them that they can be included in his shows anymore. They're okay when it's the album that he's promoting on that particular tour, but once the promotion for that album is done, then they're gone forever, apart from Dance Tonight. And New.
So New, actually, it's not really one of my favorite tracks, but it did get quite a good reception from the crowd and that. And Come On To Me, New, Come On To Me is. I mean, again, I think he did it quite early on in the set. So and that, but again, it's not the best track on that album, but
terrible.
The other thing, actually, I came across it. Have you ever seen the track? There's one called India, a track called India, which you search on the YouTube, and that's a very good track. But it never got released. It's never got released. It's a track from this period, which I think he must have done it in one of the warm up before a concert and that. But that's another deep cut, which it's a pity. It's never appeared so far, and I don't think he's likely to do an archive series on these albums, because he doesn't have really great memories of this period, and that is.
Well, I think that it was always agreed that the archive collection was always a collaboration between the music and Linda's photos. So I always thought that the archive series ends at Flaming Pie, but it's whether he goes back and fills in the 3 or 4 gaps that there are left.
Well, he should do. London Town is one of my favourite albums.
And mine. It'd just be such a shame if he doesn't go back and finish that. It just seems that since he's moved back to Capitol, there doesn't seem to be an appetite from them to carry on with this series. Obviously, they're very expensive to produce. But there are people queuing round the block to buy an archive collection, for Back to the Egg and London Town, for sure. If not, the other missing ones like Broad Street or Off the Ground. But I think Press to Play would also be a popular one. Yeah. as well.
Because I've got this. Is it the bootleg one? Is it pizzas and that sort of thing? And there's some very good tracks. Lindiana and Love Comes Falling Down, which again never got proper release. So those should be part of an archive series.
Yeah, I think Love Comes Tumbling Down. That one.
Yeah, I think it's been released as
a bit of C. Yeah, on a C,
yeah.
One of the CD singles it was on.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Anything you want to say, Ian, that we haven't covered?
No. I mean, obviously, as I said, my top album of the period is Memory Almost Full, and I think Mr. Bellamy is another standout. Track
brilliant!
Because
that
it reminds me a bit of 10cc. It's like almost written by 10cc. That one. It's quite a complex song.
I used to be a massive 10cc fan, and it is a little bit 10cc ish, but it's a great track. I wanted to just thank you for putting the channel on there on the inside of the back page. There's quite a few YouTube channels that I mentioned and podcasts as well. My friends at Two Legs as well.
Yeah, well nowadays it's not just sort of physical. I mean, obviously YouTube generates a lot of content on these artists and that.
I can quite honestly say that's the first time my channel's ever been mentioned in a book. So that's great. So, guys, Macca in the Long Noughties by Ian Derbyshire. It's on sale now. You can pick this up from Amazon. In the UK, it's $12.99. You'll have to look on your own territory to see.
So it could be something like $14 or something like that.
Yeah,
but then there's also a Kindle, a sort of electronic edition of it, and it's also you can get it from bookshops as well if you order it from Barnes and Noble and on those types of. It's also available on Kobo and all these types of things, Apple and that sort of thing.
So lots of places you can get this. Obviously we're now sort of heading for the Christmas scramble. Now there's you're up against there's an amazing amount of Paul McCartney books. I
just got an email today from Yoen. Is it Yoen Ling? Was it Yoen?
Owen Ling.
Yeah, he's put it down as one of there's 10 recommended music books of this year already. So
it's absolutely fantastic. Congratulations on it. I've really enjoyed it, and it is, guys. It is probably I think this is the only book out there at the moment that will cover this period in such depth.
I think the idea is it's not just obviously you read it once, but there's something to come back to.
Yes,
as a reference.
And it is a reference book, and a lot of people like to see the print face. It's quite big type for people like us with fading eyesight, and it is set out in an event by event, really, isn't it? So it's a very
it's got a chronology for each year, and that. There's a few pictures as well. I think the Dutch Paul McCartney fan club supplied some pictures of concerts.
So there is plenty, and of course it's one of these books that you can pick up and put down because although it's a continuing story, it's kind of a continuing story. I won't say in bullet points, but it is like event by event, and it's all chronological as well. Okay, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Hope your health is you're recovering, are you? Or something?
I'm doing well at the moment, thank you. I feel really good at the moment, so long may that last. I'm doing okay at the moment.
Right.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on the channel, Ian. Good luck with the book. Hope you sell plenty. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, And I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
Right. Thank you.